A year later came Hei Teves. One beautiful Tuesday morning.
After the trial.
After the trial, it was a year later, and life went on. There were a lot of things that happened throughout the year, which now is not the time. But we'll talk about the Hei Teves thing. And on Tuesday morning, as you started off by saying you were sitting in the yeshiva over there, I was actually doing one of the sichos that the Rebbe had said earlier. It was a Tuesday, so we would be working Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, usually on the Fabrengen on the Shabbos, and I was privileged to be in that office. And they came running up to say that there was Didan Notzach, and Didan Notzach meant, obviously, people were curious to know, but I'll be honest with you, there was a station wagon that showed up somewhere filled with boxes of vodka, and some people
Pimenta on the front, right in front of the Rebbe's office.
Right, people have been putting away money, knowing that this is going to happen. They prepared mashka for the day like this, so just in case whenever it happened, we shouldn't be caught without. And it was a straightforward celebration outside in the front. It was a pretty cold day. People were just dancing. The Pimento came up, and Eli Lipsker, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And they just played Didan Notzach over and over again. The Rebbe was in his room, and
for 3 hours till Mincha.
Rabbi Krinsky came in with the verdict, and he said that the Rebbe seemed to be quite relieved, and he asked if the Rebbe was going to have a Fabrengen, make a Fabrengen, and the Rebbe said he has to say, has to think about it, but the Rebbe came downstairs to Mincha. That, in and of itself, another indication that this was a special time, because the Rebbe davened Mincha usually upstairs 3:15, and then the people were delirious. The Rebbe appeared the first time we saw the Rebbe. The Rebbe had a pretty straight look on his face. People were screaming, people were singing, people were dancing, people were chanting. And after Kedusha, the Rebbe turned around and asked for a chumash. The Rebbe asking for a chumash means that the Rebbe is planning to say something. That was unbelievable. That was like, wow. Now, the Rebbe is going to acknowledge this. And
I think people need to understand, that at that time, sichos during the week were not common. It was mainly on a fast day, but all the big Chassidish Yom Tovim were Fabrengens, up until Memches. So this was very unusual. Those who were around after Memches, Memtes, Nun, and Aleph, to them a sicha became increasingly common. So just to emphasize how unusual it was that it was going to speak.
And the Rebbe brought it back then, in the Sikha very briefly, the Rebbe brought it back to the Yotes Kislev thing again, and the Geula of Yotes Kislev, which means basically this was a Yom Tov that the Rebbe was acknowledging here, that this is a Yotes Kislev mamish. And then the Rebbe said, he used the end of the Chitas. The Rebbe spoke about how the Chitas is broken up. Like Min Chabad is it's finished, the third day of the week. Shlishi finishes with Vatachi, Ruach, Yaakov, Avihim. That the spirit of Yaakov, their father, was alive.
That encapsulated in many ways right there, Hei Teves. Vatachi, Ruach, Yaakov, Avihim would breathe a new life into the Rebbe and into all of the Chassidim.
But that wasn't over. That night there was a big, major party, and then the next day the Rebbe went to the oil again. Came back from the oil, and the Rebbe said one of those sichos that when you heard it, you will never forget it.
Right. I think we're gonna take a look at that. Yeah. This sich was actually upstairs.
Upstairs, it couldn't go down, or for whatever reason there was no video of it. The Rebbe said it's an Eis Rotzen. That means that this is a very special time. Wow.
Let's take a look at
Let's see.
Der Vater sagt, der hat so, als Rotkin läuft nicht zweimal überhasen in den Männern. Aber die, was weiß, das hiebische Tier, haben sie das noch nie getan. Können sie das tun, als wenn Berlin hätte morgen vormachen ziehen. Sie können mitnehmen, Seele nehmen. Und ich baut das ich nicht legen in die Zetteln, mehr nicht wie übergeben. Aber weglegen die Zetteln, blieben nicht dort auf Nähe, kann sich jeder schreiben, kol Horeize. Und da hat sich nicht was zu schämen, wenn sich mehr nicht, da schreibt sich bei den Ewigsten, alle denen sie, der Reinu, Al derech ze, kommen necheton bim Dinis Acheris und bim Kemis Acherim. Busse nur da a Beis Achayim, wo sie gefindt sich, a Gottel bei Yisrael, a Tzadik bei Yisrael, a Mede Derech bei Yisrael. Der alle Bote Chaim verbunden, eine mit der Zweite, durch Mechilis, mit den Meores am Machpelah.
After that sikha, I mean, the Rebbe called this a propitious time, a special time, and word started to spread like wildfire all over the world. This is faxes had just come out and making it possible for people to send in letters, panim from all over the world, and all over New York. I remember a bunch of us went to Borough Park, and we set up a stand on 13th Avenue, and people were coming by in the dozens. There was a buzz everywhere that something special is going on in Lubavitch, and this is a very, very propitious moment, an opportunity. And the Rebbe said you can pour it all out.
He says, I'm not even going to read it.
I'm an agent, and pour it all out. And we know that subsequent to that, incredible miracles.
Incredible. I personally know of people who I can point to who were in such trouble, and this whole thing went out. I think guys put up signs everywhere, and I do know that Vav Teves doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's just a very common day. And the Rebbe said, obviously in connection to Hei Teves, that this was going to be an Eis Ratzon. The Rebbe went to the oil. I watched the Rebbe go into the oil from the rooftop, because the office of where I was working, the Sichos, had a window right there. And Rabbi Krinsky putting the bags into the back. We counted 8 or 9 bags going into the back of the Rebbe's car.
I think it was 13 bags.
And then the Rebbe instructed that whatever comes while he has already left in the oil should be brought to the oil. 3 or 4 loads came.
I think it's very important to note for today that when the Rebbe describes this week of Hei Teves, from Hei Teves to Yud Beis Teves, as an Eis Ratzon, as a special time, that's true now. And so for Chassidim around the world today, if you cannot do it on Hei Teves, at some point during the week from Hei Teves to Yud Beis Teves, every Chassid should write a pan to the Rebbe. Last year there was a Kol Keder, there was a calling by Rabbanim. Chassidim should essentially heed the Rebbe's call. When the Rebbe described this week as an Eis Ratzon,
special week,
that obviously continues to be the case, and in even greater measure. Yeah, Thursday night was the official Fabrengen sponsored by Agudas Chassidic Chabad. I remember the initial speakers had a hard time, this is from watching the video, had a hard time getting anybody's attention.
Wait, you don't remember? It was hard to remember much of the evenings. That was
Nat Lewin, I remember saying that he's been involved in litigation for decades. Yeah. Never ever has he seen
such a celebration.
Has he seen a ruling being greeted by such celebration? But I remember we were all waiting to hear Rabbi Yael, and no one had heard from Rabbi Yael up until that point. Yeah. Rabbi Yael Khan. And he got up on Thursday night, and I think what he said is worth repeating. He put Hei Teves into this into a historical perspective, and sort of a progression. And what he said was this: he said that on Purim, the war that was waged by Haman and Achashverosh was to annihilate the Jewish people physically. Chanukah, the war of the Greeks, was to destroy the Jewish people spiritually through assimilation and Hellenism. Yutes Kislev, the war was against the Oyer, the light of
Emanating
Chassidus.
from the Alter Rebbe, from Chassidus.
And Hei Teves, the war was against the Moed, against the very source, against the Rebbe himself, and the relationship between the Rebbe and Chassidim.
And the movement and Chassidus.
And I think that's a very, very powerful way to contextualize really what Hei Teves is and the historic significance. We have to remember as Chassidim, Hei Teves, this is the Yom Tov of our generation. We're celebrating it this Kislev 200 years later, in greater measure all over the world. We're celebrating Hanukkah 2,200 years later. We're celebrating Pesach 3,300 years later. We're celebrating these Yomim Tovim because they represent the truth that is real to us now. How much more so? A Yom Tov that is directly related to the Rebbe and to his relationship to us is a Yom Tov.
And to the whole world.
And to the whole world is a Yom Tov that we need to celebrate and commemorate with everything we've got.
Very well said. Yasher Koyach for that. L'chaim to that. I do want to mention that usually around Yud Aleph Nisan time, when the Rebbe's personal Yom Tovim, Rebbe's personal special times, the Rebbe would reach out and would talk about appreciation, would express appreciation for the people who took their time and effort to come to visit, to send good wishes. And the Rebbe did the same thing for Hei Teves, which really was unusual. And on Asara B'Teves, which was within the week, 5 days later, on that Sunday, the Rebbe mentioned this actually for everybody. And we have a clip of this. Let's see here.
So given kama bekama, was so meesgedrig zeere broches bekama ifane, bis til tule de gavrin tal tule de nashe. Kedei af me Wasser sein a psura teve oder nis Wasser werden mit psura teve. Und frei sich zusammen in a Nefen von teve lev mischte damit. Ad nisina streder von die all, was sich mistate gewähren in psuris tevis. Und in meisim tevim. Und in mischte damit. Und in Svadus zusammen. Afal Pi, was me hat im Tag keine Schoris, von jedem Basunder, es mit duber kama pomim, tut min tos bejesser seis und bejesser reis, bemein mit du Matze von esser pomim esser mit nei Yisroel.
The Rebbe acknowledges not just the efforts of the people who gave good wishes and said Mazel Tov, but the fact that there was a farbrengen together and Toiv Leiv Mishta Tomid, that means Mishta means a party, a gathering of celebration. And Tomid, constantly, the Rebbe did acknowledge the farbrengens and the parties and the dancing that was going on every single night through the night. It began with a farbrengen, but for the rest of the night, there was Simchas Torah. There was like Simchas Torah every single night.
Yep.
Bachurim were dancing, Yungalite were dancing. It was just a dance. It was just an expression of such sheer joy.
Like Simchas Pesach Sheva.
Yeah, mamish, like Simchas Torah.
All night long,
And
every night.
I'm thinking to myself, imagine when the Svarim, the rest of the Svarim come back. There's other Svarim that are still being held somewhere in the Soviet Union or wherever it is in Russia.
Former
Soviet Union. Yeah, whatever it is, when those Svarim come back, I can't think of a greater celebration than this is Mashiach's coming. I do want to conclude like this. The Rebbe said on the back wall, on the western wall of 770, so that by the Farbrengen, it was a sign that stood out, even though there was bleachers all the way up. This was on top of that. And the Rebbe started off by saying the first thing we need to talk about today is the concept of the day, as it's already written in the letters, big letters, Kiddush Levana letters, the Rebbe said. Kiddush Levana letters means letters that have to be big because it's dark outside. And the Rebbe turned to his left for a second where the sign was, and the Rebbe said then, he spoke about Sfarim. He spoke about the first Sefer, which is the Sefer Torah, and the Rebbe spoke about Sfarim, and the Sfarim, and Sfarim, and every year since, the Rebbe mentioned that this day is connected to Sfarim. People should buy Sfarim, people should be involved with Sfarim.
I'd like to conclude saying, wishing a l'chaim to my fellow Chassidim.
L'chaim. To my fellow Chassidim as well. Hey, come on now.
Our fellow Chassidim. I referenced Pesach before, 3,300 years later, and we still sit around the Seder, and there's so much to say about Yetzias Mitzrayim. As I think is clear from this very, very short and brief Farbrengen. There are so many different aspects to this story of Hei Teves, and that's why it's so important for us to come together every year and to Farbring and to maybe dwell on one aspect of it, and most importantly to personalize it. And the gratitude that the Rebbe expressed then on Asar B'Teves Chassidim coming in, conveying that this is our simcha. My simcha is your simcha is my simcha. And it's sort of reminiscent. A couple of weeks ago on Living Torah, Mendy Groner from Eretz Yisrael was interviewed, and he was interacting with Dr. Resnick. This was on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and the Rebbe was very, very, very gratified when he heard that the Chassidim had celebrated all night long, and he said on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and he said the next morning to Dr. Resnick, there's only two people who didn't dance last night. You know, myself and you also need to, but you need to dance, you need to celebrate. The Rebbe Simcha is our Simcha. Hei Teves is Vatchi Ruach Yaakov Aviyam, a revival of the spirit, if you will, and it's a time for us to reinvigorate our connection to the Rebbe, that it be both personal, that it be deep, and most importantly, practical, and it all starts by learning the Rebbe's Torah, and I think that's a great suggestion that you make if you're buying books, to buy a book that relates directly to the Rebbe. And I'm a big believer in, next to your bedside table, have a book that relates to the Rebbe. Let your last thoughts of the day, let your soul rise up to heaven with thoughts of the Rebbe on your mind. And then we wake up in the morning, and the Shomesh and Osatavi Tahirahi, with a pure and re-energized soul. So,
and also the Rebbe's Takonis, like the Rebbe said in the Sikha that we saw before, the Rebbe's Takonis of Rambam and Miftzoim and all the other things, not just learning from the Rebbe's Torah, but following the Rebbe's way, and that we bring the Rebbe into life, as the Rebbe said himself about the Frierdiker Rebbe.
May we see the day. I think it was at that rally when the Rebbe said that we will witness the day when the whole world will be a Beis Chabad. The whole world will be saturated with the Mayonis and with the connection to the Mayan, to the Mokir, to the Rebbe himself. May we see speedily nowadays the coming of Mashiach, when we'll be reunited with the Rebbe, and the Shoma Beguf may be taken from Yad Mamish.
Amen. The ultimate Didan Notzach.